What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Perhaps I Will Swerve and Bend That Corner. As always, I'm your host, Zach Cronin, and today we're going to be talking about LaMelo Ball because I have come to the conclusion that LaMelo Ball is one of the most chaotic players in the NBA, and I mean that with the utmost respect because I think that not only is he tremendously talented, he is also tremendously entertaining thanks to this play style. This tweet, well, this is not a tweet, I'm on camera. This stems from a tweet I saw where someone pointed out that LaMelo Ball still plays basketball like he's at Chino Hills because there was this one play, I forget about who the opponent was, but he was on the 3 point line and he threw himself in off the backboard alley oop from the 3 point line. He is literally the exact same player, except there is just more polish on his game, and he's just an overall better player. At the time of this recording, Melo is averaging about 30 points. He's at 29.9, so I'm going to give you a stat in a little bit that I I could round up to 30, but you can't do that in the basketball reference database. He's averaging 30 points, about 7 assists, and almost 5.5 rebounds. He is one of like 9 players, I believe, to average 29 points, 7 assists, and 5 rebounds. This, of course, includes LeBron, Luka, Jokic, Oscar Robertson. I'm pretty sure Russell Westbrook is on there, James Harden, Dwayne Wade. So, very, very good company. Melo is obviously the biggest piece of what Charlotte is doing in this rebuild. He is the unquestioned franchise centerpiece, him alongside Brandon Miller. They are a really terrific duo that Charlotte can build around, and that Charles Lee can help build a system for them that will allow them to play the most productive basketball that they're capable of. One thing that I have to mention when talking about Melo is that he is only 23. There is still like 2 or 3 more years of him left in development. I think this is important to point out because there are certain aspects of Melo's game that are still unpolished, and he does make mistakes that you would expect of a young player. And I'm a little more lenient when talking about him, even though he's a 5 year veteran, because he really hasn't been healthy, right? Last year, I have his page up on Basketball Reference. Last year, he played 22 games. 2 years ago, he played 36 games. Like, this guy was just not around NBA basketball that much, playing in, getting game reps. But when he was terrific. Like, he was Rookie of the Year. He was a one-time All-Star. He could have been a 2 or 3 time All-Star if he were healthy over these last 2 seasons. I fully expect him to be an All-Star this year. I know he's going to be on my All-Star ballot because he is, if not the best guard in the Eastern Conference, the second best. I mean, it's like him, Cade Cunningham, Damian Lillard has been great. Of course, this is all on like a statistical basis, but Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, they're in that conversation as well. But what makes LaMelo Ball so chaotic and what makes him so unique is that there is literally no part of the game that he leaves untouched. I mentioned all of the production he has in terms of scoring points and creating points for his teammates. He also averages nearly 4 fouls per game and just about 4 turnovers per game, which that does sound like a lot, but believe it or not, it's a really low percentage of his possessions because his usage rate is at 38. His turnover percentage is only about 12%, which means that for every 100 possessions, he's only averaging 12 turnovers, which among all of those guys that I talked about before would be one of the lower marks. This is like Nikola Jokic territory that we're talking about. But he just goes out and plays basketball. And whatever the vibes are, that's the play that he's going to make. When I watch him, I get the same sense of when I'm watching Q3 in Formula One qualifying, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, they're on their final outlap and they're gunning for pole position. They are simultaneously out of control while also being entirely in control. They are pushing the car to its final limits. And they are doing it with such tremendous skill that it doesn't look that way. Like, you're just seeing this guy whip a fucking vehicle at 180 miles an hour, and then they wind up being the first, second, or third best driver. This is exactly how I feel about LaMelo Ball. Not that he's like incredibly fast, but just his play style is so erratic. It's so frenetic. It's so awkward and unorthodox that he looks like he's going to fall over sometimes. He looks like he's just going to lose his footing on a crossover. His jump shot also isn't even really a jump shot. It's like a catapult shot where every time he shoots it, you're like, this shit's getting blocked. And then he's got this weird launch angle that prevents that, very similar to what Lonzo Ball had when he first came into the league, albeit not as bad. It's so much fun to watch because there is such an unpredictability to his game, which is good for the offense and bad for the defense, but also bad for the offense because you don't really know what he's going to do. And because of this, there are still like some issues with efficiency. He's shooting just 42% from the field and 34% from three. Granted, these are not the worst marks we've ever seen. We've had plenty of superstars throughout the NBA who routinely shot below 40%. I mean, I think Allen Iverson had a few seasons where he failed to broach 40%. He finished in 2002 as a 26-year-old shooting 39.8% from the field, and then 2 years later, also an All-Star at 28 in his prime, shot 38.7% from the field. There are of course reasons for that. Allen Iverson saw a tremendous amount of defensive pressure. That's what you have to expect as a superstar. The defense is going to key on you, especially when you're in a situation like Philadelphia back then or Charlotte now, where you don't have a tremendous amount of help. There's a reason that this Hornets team is 8-27. I understand you have Brandon Miller. He's fantastic, but beyond them, there really isn't anyone that the defense has to key on with a tremendous amount of intensity. I would say Miles Bridges from time to time, but even then, you would live with Miles Bridges giving you 18 instead of Melo giving you 30. I do also want to give credit to Charles Lee. He and the Hornets organization are allowing LaMelo Ball to play his freest style of basketball. They knew when they drafted this kid, this is the player that they were getting. This is how he played when he was in Australia. He was a highly effective playmaker, a not so efficient scorer, but those are things that you can work on. And it's clear that he has gotten better and more comfortable playing in the NBA with this organization. The Hornets could have very easily tried to mold LaMelo Ball into something that he's not. And I'm glad that they didn't. I think that it's beneficial for both the franchise and the player to allow the player to perform in the way in which he wants to, and then figure out where his holes are and bring in pieces to counteract that. Obviously, in the modern NBA, this is mostly centered around finding defensive players to hide LaMelo Ball, but also to just have an elite defense, because that's generally how teams win championships. In the Hornets case, it's finding additional offense for Melo, because really outside of him and Miller, as I mentioned before, there aren't any go-to guys. There isn't anyone who Charlotte can lean on when Melo is having a bad game. I mean, he shot 7 of 20 against Cleveland most recently. He shot 11 of 32 against Washington a few games before that. But these things are all going to come in time. And you don't even really need to find like a tertiary scorer. It's really just perimeter shooters, because Melo obviously is going to command a lot of attention. And on these drive and kick opportunities, when he gets into the area below the free throw line and into the paint, he needs to know that he can kick it out to anyone else on the court and they'll convert. As it stands, Charlotte is averaging the third most three-pointers attempted this season and are shooting the 25th best percentage. Granted, a large portion of these attempts are coming from Melo and Brandon Miller, who are doing a much better job of lifting that percentage. The two of them alone are combining for 24 attempts from three, and they're shooting at around 35%. But then you look at Miles Bridges, 28%. Grant Williams, before he went down, 36%. Trey Mann, 40%. Vasily Micic, 30%. Cody Martin, Vasily Micic is at 33%. Cody Martin at 30%. There's a lot of inconsistency on the perimeter. It's the style of basketball that teams play today, where you need just as many shooters as possible. You have to mimic what Oklahoma City has done, what Boston has done. If Charlotte is able to construct their roster in a way similar to those two teams, they are going to have a tremendous amount of long-term success because LaMelo Ball is a legitimate right now he's a legitimate star, but I believe that this guy has not only superstar potential, but I sincerely believe that LaMelo Ball has all of the properties necessary to be the face of the NBA. We've been having this discussion over and over, conversations center around Anthony Edwards, John Morant, obviously Wemby, Luca, but they always seem to fall back on needing a homegrown face of the league. LaMelo Ball should definitely be in those conversations. I mean, you have a guy who averages 30 points, 7 assists and 5 rebounds. Think of the numbers that he's going to post when he figures out how to shoot just a little bit more efficiently. I think Melo caps out at around 45% from the field, maybe like 38% from 3, but for a high volume guy, those are stellar. Those are stellar marks for a dude who's taking more than 20 shots from the field. As of today, he's shooting the ball every night damn near 25 times. The fact that he's able to make 42% of those attempts, he's making 10 shots a game. It's tremendous. Holy shit. I was just scrolling on Melo's basketball reference page. I didn't know that he was leading the league in usage at 39%. That has got to be one of the highest usage ratings of all time. I will check that before I post this video. And that just makes everything even more impressive to me. There are not many players who could take that usage rate, take this role in the offense, and churn out objectively positive results consistently. It takes a superstar level player to do that. Like, this is Luka Doncic level usage. This is James Harden in Houston level usage. This is Russell Westbrook in Oklahoma City level usage. And he's doing this at 23. Just for comparison, James Harden's usage didn't eclipse 35 until he was 28 years old and had been a finalist for MVP twice and had gone to the finals once and had been a 5-time All-Star. I hope this really puts into perspective the preposterousness of what LaMelo is doing. The rest of the analytics don't really favor him too positively. I look at win shares per 48 minutes. That's at 0.114, which indicates that he is impacting winning, but at a rate slightly above league average. Also, his PER is at 22. For that Harden season I just talked about, his PER was 29.8, which led the league. That'll come. Generally, analytics don't really reflect positively on players who aren't an overall efficient contributor. And as I mentioned, LaMelo Ball, he does foul quite a lot. He does miss quite a few shots. He is prone to turning the ball over, but as I mentioned before, his rate this year is lower than a bunch of Harden's turnover rates when he was in Houston, which I remember that was a huge part of the dialogue with James Harden is how frequently he turned the ball over. And this was right when per 100 possession stats or pace adjusted stats were really starting to become mainstream because they were necessary to analyze basketball. And we learned that obviously Harden is going to average 5-6 assists a night because he's just such a focal point of this Rockets offense. But even then, that season I mentioned, his turnover rate was 19%. So on a per 100 possessions basis, LaMelo Ball is turning the ball over 7 fewer times than Harden. I'm not really sure if there's even a player comp for LaMelo Ball because he is such a truly unique scorer. I mean, or a unique player. Statistically, yes, he's unique, but there are things that he's doing now that other players have done in the past. But he really is he really is a fascinating player. He's probably like the ideal archetype for rebuilding teams. I mean, he's 6'7", plays point guard, has solid vision, is a gifted scorer, at least in terms of um, ability to score in various ways. I don't know if he has best player in the league potential, but I do feel that, at a certain point, LaMelo Ball will be in that conversation, especially as I mentioned, if he starts shooting better from the field. He shot 39% from three in his second year, and this year he's shooting 51% on twos, which is currently on pace to be a career high. So it shows that he is more comfortable in scoring in a variety of ways, but he is also still having to adapt to all of this pressure that defenses are showing him. That was a similar sentiment that came up in my Grady Dick video, where Dick is where Dick is having a better sophomore season despite the fact that his shooting clips are down. And this comes from the fact that teams are just actually game planning for him now. I mentioned specifically his 2-point efficiency is down from his rookie year, and you can see it on tape as well. He is dealing with different types of looks, various different pressures, extra defenders. Now, just imagine what Grady Dick is seeing and putting it on the level of LaMelo Ball. But I truly believe that he will, at some point, figure it out and be in the mid 40s consistently with his overall shooting percentage. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this video out. Thank you guys so very much for coming to hang out with me today. As always, everything I'm associated with is down in the description box below. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at least TikTok for the next couple of weeks that it's here. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Drop a comment as well. It really helps out with the algorithm. If you do any of those three things, you will become my new favorite person. And with that, I will see you in the next one.